When trauma therapist Dr. Elena Vasquez encounters a mysterious patient on the brink of suicide, she makes a life-changing decision that shatters everything she thought she knew about right and wrong. What starts as a desperate attempt to save, a broken man becomes a dangerous game of survival, betrayal, and unexpected love. Dear friends, prepare for a story that will grip your heart and leave you breathless. Let the story unfold. The rain hammered against the hospital windows like bullets, each drop a reminder that some storms never end. Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the psychiatric ward's corridor, watching the city blur through streaks of water. 3 years of night shifts had carved hollow circles under her eyes, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the weight of other people's pain felt unbearable. "Doctor, we have a situation in room 304, Elena." Turned to ward nurse Patricia's voice, already knowing what she'd find. Another broken soul brought in by police, another person whose world had shattered beyond recognition. She straightened her white coat and walked down the sterile hallway, her footsteps echoing like a countdown. Room 304 held a man who looked like he'd been carved from marble and then systematically destroyed. His expensive suit was torn, blood staining the collar. Dark hair fell across his face as he sat motionless in the corner chair, hands zip-tied behind his back for everyone's safety. Even in his current state, something about him commanded attention. "What happened?" Lena asked the officer standing. "Guard found him on the Riverside Bridge. Was about to jump when we pulled him back. Won't say a word, won't give us his name. No ID, but that watch he's wearing costs more than my car." Elena nodded and approached slowly. She'd learned to read the language of trauma, and this man spoke it fluently. His breathing was controlled despite the chaos, suggesting military or high-stress training. The way he held himself, even restrained, radiated a dangerous kind of intelligence. "I'm Dr. Vasquez," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "I'm not here to judge or fix you. I'm just here to listen." For the first time, he lifted his head. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, beautiful and devastating. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with unshed tears. "Some things can't be fixed, doctor." "Maybe not," Elena replied, surprising herself with her honesty. "But some things don't need fixing. They just need understanding." Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the armor he'd built around himself. "You don't know what I've done? Then tell me." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and Elena felt something inside her chest respond to the sound. She recognized the look in his eyes, because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. The look of someone carrying weight that wasn't meant for one person alone? "My name is Marcus," he said finally. "And 3 hours ago I killed my best friend." Confession hit Elena like a physical blow, but she forced herself to remain steady. She'd heard confessions before, but something in his voice told her this was different. This was truth wrapped in agony. "Tell me what happened, Marcus." He leaned forward, his voice dropping too, barely above a whisper. "He was dying anyway, cancer, but he begged me to make it stop, and I couldn't watch him suffer anymore. So I did what he asked, and now I have to live with that choice forever." Elena's breath caught. She understood now why he'd been on that bridge. The weight of mercy could be heavier than the weight of murder. "Why didn't you stay with him?" "Because I'm a coward," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I helped him die, but I couldn't help him live. I've spent my whole life running from the people who needed me most." Lena felt something dangerous stirring in her chest. Professional. Distance was dissolving, replaced by recognition. This man's pain called to her own in ways that terrified her. "What if I told you I understood?" she heard herself say. "What if I told you I've made choices that haunt me too?" Marcus looked up, searching her face. "Then I'd say you're either lying to make me feel better, or you're as broken as I am." "I'm as broken as you are." The admission hung in the air. Between them, dangerous and electric. Elena knew she was crossing lines she'd sworn never to cross. But looking into Marcus's eyes felt like looking into a mirror she'd been avoiding for years. Outside, lightning illuminated the sky, and in that brief moment of brightness, Elena saw her reflection in the window. She looked like a woman about to make a choice that would change everything. "Dr. Vasquez," Marcus said, and her name on his. Lips sounded like a prayer. What happens now? Elena stood up, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at the security camera in the corner, knowing her next words would be recorded, knowing they would destroy the career she'd built from nothing. Now, she said, reaching for the key to his restraints, we save each other. Elena's hands trembled as she unlocked Marcus's restraints. The metal cuffs fell to the floor with a sound like breaking chains, and she knew there was no going back. The security camera watched from its corner like a mechanical judge, recording every moment. Of her professional suicide? You're making a mistake, Marcus said, rubbing his wrists where the restraints had cut into his skin. You don't know me. I know enough, Elena replied, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. I know you stayed with your friend until the end. I know you came here instead of running. That tells me something. Marcus stood slowly, testing his freedom. Even in his broken state, he moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to danger. What it tells you is that I'm weak. Strong people don't break like this. Strong people break the loudest, Elena said. It's the weak ones who shatter. Silently, something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that went deeper than words. Lena had spent 3 years listening to confessions, but this felt different. This felt like the beginning of her own. Why are you helping me? Marcus asked. Elena turned away from him, unable to meet his eyes. Because 6 months ago, I was supposed to save a little girl named Sophia. She was 8 years old, brought in. After her father beat her unconscious, I followed protocol. I did everything by the book, and she died anyway. The admission felt like swallowing glass. Lena had never spoken those words aloud, not even to her therapist. That's not your fault, Marcus said quietly, isn't it? Elena whirled to face him, tears she'd been holding back for months finally breaking free. I could have pushed harder for protective custody. I could have bent the rules. Instead, I sent her back to a system that failed her, and now she's dead. Because I was too afraid to risk my career. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the rain still clinging to his clothes. You can't save everyone, Elena. But I should have saved her. The weight of Sophia's death had been crushing. Elena for months, turning her into a ghost, haunting her own life. She worked endless shifts to avoid going home to an empty apartment where the silence screamed with guilt. So this is what? Marcus asked, gesturing to the unlocked restraints. Penance? This is me finally choosing to be brave.
Act!
Could respond, the door burst open. Officer Reynolds stood in the doorway, his hand on his weapon, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. Dr. Vasquez, step away from the patient. Elena's heart lurched, but she stood her ground. He's not dangerous, Officer Reynolds. Confessed to murder, Doc. That makes him plenty dangerous. He confessed to mercy, Elena corrected. There's a difference. Reynolds spoke into his radio, calling for backup. Elena knew she had minutes before this room would be flooded with security. Minutes before Marcus would be dragged away to face a system that didn't understand the difference between murder and mercy. Elena, Marcus said urgently, you need to walk away right now. Tell them I overpowered you, took your keys. You can still salvage this. No. The word came out stronger than Elena felt. I'm done walking away from people who need help. Reynolds drew his weapon, pointing it at Marcus. Sir, get back on the ground. Now. Don't, Elena said, stepping. Between them, please. Just give me 5 minutes to explain. Move aside, Doctor. Elena felt Marcus's hand on her shoulder, warm and steady. It's okay, he whispered. I knew this would end badly. Thank you for trying. But Elena wasn't done fighting. 3 years of watching the system fail, vulnerable people had built a fire in her chest, and tonight it was burning bright. Officer Reynolds, she said, her voice taking on the authority she'd earned through years. Of saving lives, this man is having a psychological crisis. It's not a flight risk, and he's not violent. Give me 1 hour to properly evaluate him. Confess to murder, Reynolds repeated. He confessed to ending the suffering of a dying. Man, that's not the same thing, and you know it. The standoff stretched taut as a wire. Elena could hear footsteps in the hallway, more officers responding to the call. In seconds, this room would become a battlefield, and Marcus would become collateral damage. There's another way, Marcus said suddenly. Elena turned to look at him, seeing something dangerous and desperate in his storm-gray eyes. What way? Marcus moved so quickly that Elena barely saw it happen. One moment he was standing behind her. Next he had Officer Reynolds' weapon in his hands, the safety disengaged, barrel pointing at the floor. Now everyone needs to stay very calm, Marcus said, his voice taking on a different quality. Professional. Military? Elena's blood turned to ice water. Gus, what are you doing? I'm saving you from making a mistake you can't take back, he said, never taking his eyes off Reynolds. Officer, I need you to very slowly reach for your radio and tell them you have the situation under control. You're making this worse, Reynolds said, but his hand moved toward his radio. No, Marcus replied. I'm making sure Dr. Vasquez doesn't throw away her life for mine. She's worth saving. I'm not. Elena felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything was spinning out of control, and she realized she'd unleashed something she couldn't contain. Marcus, put the gun down. We can figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, he said. Killed someone tonight, Elena. That's the truth, no matter how you dress it up. The only question now is whether I destroy you too. Elena saw her reflection in the window again. This time she looked like a woman who'd just learned the difference between saving someone and being saved by them. Tell me this isn't who you really are, she whispered. Marcus met her eyes in the glass, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. I'm exactly who you think I am, he said. The question is, who are you? Elena stared at Marcus holding the gun, and suddenly everything clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was solving. The controlled breathing, the military precision, the way he moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. You're not here because you tried to kill yourself, she said, the realization hitting her like cold water. You're here because you're running from something else entirely. Marcus's grip on the weapon never wavered, but something shifted in his expression. Elena, don't. The man you killed wasn't dying of cancer, was he? Stop. But Elena couldn't stop. The pieces were falling into place too quickly, painting a picture that made her stomach clench with dread. He was your partner, your handler, and you killed him because he found out you were going to betray someone. Dr. Vasquez, Officer Reynolds said carefully, whatever you think you know, keep it to yourself. Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Too late for that. Looked directly at Elena, and she saw the exact moment he decided to destroy them both. You want the truth, Doctor? The truth is that my real name isn't Marcus. It's Captain David Chen, formerly of Army Intelligence, currently of no fixed allegiance. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. What? The man I killed tonight was Agent Harrison. He discovered I've been selling military secrets to foreign buyers for the past 2 years. When he confronted me, I put 3 bullets in his chest and watched him die. The confession hung in the air like poison. Elena realized she'd been breathing too fast, the room spinning around her. That's impossible, she whispered. You were on that bridge because you couldn't live with mercy killing. I saw the pain in your eyes. You saw what I needed you to see, David said. I'm very good at making people believe what serves my purpose. Officer Reynolds spoke into his radio again, but David shook his head. I wouldn't do that, officer. See, the reason I ended up on that bridge wasn't guilt. It was because Harrison's death is going to trigger a very thorough investigation. And there are some very dangerous people who can't afford for me to be interrogated. What are you talking about? Elena demanded. David's smile was sharp enough to cut. I'm talking about the fact that in approximately 20 minutes, this hospital is going to be hit by people who want to make sure I never talk. And everyone in this room is going to die unless we get very creative very quickly. Elena's mind reeled. You're lying? This is manipulation, is it? David checked his watch with casual precision. Elena, I need you to think very carefully. How did the police find me on that bridge? How did they know exactly where to look? Elena opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She didn't know. They found me because I called it in myself, David continued. Because the psychiatric hold was the only safe place. I could think of where my former employers couldn't get to me immediately. I needed time. Time for what? To decide whether to run or fight back, Officer Reynolds had gone pale. You're talking about a terror threat against a hospital. I'm talking about damage control, David corrected. The people I worked for. Don't leave loose ends. Harrison was loose end number 1. I'm loose end number 2. And now, unfortunately, you're both loose end number 3. Elena felt sick. The patients, the other doctors, will be collateral damage if we don't move. Fast. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the night, but instead of relief, Elena felt fresh terror. How could she tell if those were real police or something else entirely? Why should we trust you? She asked. Because David said, I'm the only one in this room who knows what's coming. And despite what you might think about me right now, I don't want innocent people to die. Elena studied his face, trying to separate truth from deception. If you cared about innocent people, you wouldn't have sold military secrets. You're right, David said simply. But people change. Sometimes in the space of a single conversation with someone who sees something worth saving in them. The admission hit Elena like a physical blow. She realized that despite everything, despite the lies and the weapon and the confession to treason, she still saw something human in his eyes. This is insane, she said. Yes, it is. The question is whether you're brave enough to be insane with me. Elena looked at Officer Reynolds, who was sweating despite the cool air conditioning. She looked at the security camera, which was probably recording what would either be her death or her transformation into a fugitive. What do you need us to do? She heard herself ask. David's expression softened slightly. First, Officer Reynolds needs to radio that he has everything under control and needs everyone to stay clear of this wing for the next hour. I can't do that, Reynolds protested. You can and you will, David replied, because in 15 minutes, this place is going to turn into a war zone, and the only chance any of us have of surviving is if we control the battlefield. Elena stepped closer to Reynolds. Do it, please. You're asking me to trust a confessed murderer and traitor? I'm asking you to trust me, Elena said. And I'm telling you that despite everything, I believe him about the threat. Reynolds looked between them, sweat beading on his forehead. Finally, he reached for his radio. As he made the call, David looked at Elena with an expression she couldn't read. You know, this changes everything about who you are, he said quietly. Maybe I was ready to change, Elena replied. Maybe you were. But Elena, I need you to understand something before we go any further. What? David's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Everything I told you about Mercy killing my friend? That was true. Agent Harrison was dying of cancer, and he did beg me to end his suffering. Elena felt the world tilt again. What? But I also sold those secrets. And there are still very dangerous people coming to kill us all. The truth is, rarely simple, Elena. Are you ready for complicated? Before she could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in hellish red shadows. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she heard the distant sound of breaking glass from somewhere in the hospital. They're here, David whispered. Officer Reynolds fumbled for his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. How many? Enough. David moved to the window, peering through the blinds for vehicles. Professional team. We have maybe 3 minutes before they reach this floor. Elena's training kicked in despite her terror. The patients have to evacuate the ward. Can't save everyone, David said harshly. If we try, we'll save no one. I won't leave them. David turned from the window, and in the red emergency lighting, he looked like something carved from shadow. These people will kill every patient on this floor just to make sure they get me. Our only chance is to draw them away. How, David? Check the weapons ammunition with practiced efficiency. We run. We make them chase us, instead of hunting room by room. That's suicide, Reynolds said. No, that's sacrifice. There's a difference. Lena felt tears burning her eyes. She thought of Mrs. Patterson in room 301, who'd been brought in after a psychotic break. Just off, Tommy in 305, a teenager who tried to hang himself after being rejected by his family. Of all the broken people on this ward who couldn't run, couldn't fight, could only wait in darkness for whatever came next. There has to be another way, she said. There is, David replied quietly. But you're not going to like it. Tell Tell me. I surrender myself. Let them take me. The confusion. You and Reynolds get everyone else out. No. The word came out sharper than Elena intended. No, I won't let you do that. Why? 2 hours ago, you didn't know I existed? Elena struggled to find words for what she was feeling. Because 2 hours ago, I was dead inside. You changed. Something in me. I won't watch you die for it. Something passed across David's face, an expression she couldn't read in the dim light. Elena, I need to tell you something. Especially now. David moved closer, close enough that she could see her reflection in his eyes. The money from selling those secrets. I didn't keep it. What? I funneled it to 3 different organizations. Medical research, trauma therapy programs, and a foundation that helps families of military suicide victims. Elena stared at him. You were laundering money for humanitarian causes? I was stealing from the people who killed my brother in Afghanistan and giving it to people trying to heal the damage they caused? Your brother, Michael? He came back from deployment broken and the system failed him. Put a gun to his head in a VA parking lot because no one would listen when he said he was drowning. Elena felt her heart crack open. David. Harrison found out about the money trail. He was going to expose everything, which would have shut down the funding permanently. All those programs would have died. So you killed him to protect them? I killed him because he begged me to. The cancer was eating him alive, and he had maybe 2 weeks left of agony. But I also killed him because it was the only way to keep those programs running. Elena felt like she was falling through space. You let me believe you were a traitor. I am a traitor. Betrayed my country to serve my conscience. Is a fact. That it was for a good cause doesn't change what I am. The sound of elevator doors opening echoed down the hallway. David raised the weapon, positioning himself between Elena and the door. There on this floor, he said. David, there's something I need to tell you too. Elena, now is not the time. Yes, it is. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. Sophia, the little girl I told you about? She didn't die? Because the system failed her. David's expression went very still. What? She died because I couldn't save her from her father, but I could save her from suffering? She was brain dead, David. The machines were keeping her body alive, but her mind was already gone. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You unplugged her. I unplugged her, and I've been carrying that choice alone for 6 months. When you told me about Mercy killing Harrison, I recognized the weight you were carrying because I've been carrying it too. Footsteps in the hallway, getting closer. David pressed his back against the wall beside the door, weapon ready. So, we're both murderers, he said quietly. We're both people who made impossible choices for love, Elena. His voice was rough with emotion. If we don't make it out of this, we will. If we don't, I need you to know that talking to you tonight gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. What? Hope that good people still exist in this world? The doorknob turned slowly, and Elena watched David transform. The broken man. On the bridge, the conflicted soldier, the grieving brother, all of it disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal and utterly focused. Stay behind me, he whispered. The door exploded inward, and chaos erupted into their small, red-lit world.
Oh,
Elena saw muzzle flashes, heard Officer Reynolds cry out, felt David's hand grab her wrist and pull her toward the window. The fire. Escape! He shouted over the sound of gunfire. Elena ran, her feet moving without conscious thought, following David through a maze of destruction. Behind them, she could hear voices, professional and calm, coordinating a hunt. They reached the window, and David kicked it open, glass showering the fire escape beyond. Rain poured through the opening, and Elena realized they were 7 floors up, with nowhere to go but down. Can you climb? David asked. I can try. That's all anyone can do. As they stepped onto the fire escape, Elena heard a sound that made her blood freeze. Officer Reynolds, screaming her name from somewhere back in the darkness of the hospital. They have him, she said. David grabbed her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. Lena, listen to me. We cannot save him. If we try, we all die. And then Sophia's death means nothing. Michael's death means nothing, and Harrison's death means nothing. I can't just leave him. You're not leaving him. You're choosing to honor his sacrifice by surviving it. Elena looked back at the broken window, then at David's face, rain streaming down his cheeks like tears. What kind of people does that make us? She whispered. The kind who get to keep fighting, David replied. And then they were climbing down. Through the storm, leaving Reynolds behind, carrying the weight of another impossible choice between them like a stone. 6 months later, Elena stood in the garden of a small clinic in rural Montana, watching David teach a group of veterans how to tend vegetables. His hands, which had once held weapons and made impossible choices, now coaxed life from soil with infinite patience. The clinic specialized in treating PTSD through agricultural therapy, funded by an anonymous donor who'd made sure the program would never lack resources. Elena had taken a position there after her medical license was quietly reinstated through channels she didn't question. The tomatoes are looking good, she said, joining him among the raised beds. They should. I've been talking to them every day. David wiped dirt from his hands, leaving streaks of earth on the towel. How was your session with Marcus? Marcus was a 22-year-old who'd come back from deployment unable to sleep, unable to connect, unable to forgive himself for surviving when others hadn't. Elena had been working with him for 3 months, and yesterday he'd smiled for the first time since his arrival. He's making progress, she said, slowly but steadily. He reminds me of someone I used to know. David's expression softened. They rarely talked about that night at the hospital, but it lived between them like a shared language only they could speak. Officer Reynolds had survived, though he'd left the force afterward. The official story was that a gas leak had caused an explosion in the psychiatric ward, resulting in several casualties. David Chen had never existed, and Dr. Elena Vasquez had been reassigned after a nervous breakdown following the traumatic incident. The truth was buried under layers of bureaucracy and classified reports, but sometimes Elena wondered if that was better than justice. The world was complicated, and simple answers rarely fit complex situations. Elena, David said, pulling her from her thoughts. There's something I want to show you. He led her to a small grove behind the main building, where a wooden bench sat beneath an oak tree. The bench hadn't been there yesterday. I made it, he said, running his hand along the smooth surface. Carved the inscription myself. Elena read the words etched into the wood, for those who carry the weight of impossible choices. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's for Harrison and Sophia and Michael and Reynolds, who's still alive but carries his own scars now. For everyone who's made choices in the dark and had to live with them in the light. Elena sat down on the bench, feeling the solid weight of wood beneath her. Do you ever regret it? What we did that night? David was quiet for a long moment, watching clouds move across the sky. I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret saving you, or the patience we managed to get out, or the fact that because we survived, this place exists and people like Marcus have somewhere to heal. Sometimes I dream about what would have happened if we'd made different choices. What do you see? Versions of us that never met? Versions where you died on that bridge or I never unlocked your restraints? Paths where we played it safe and let other people pay the price for our caution? And how do those versions end? Elena considered this. With me still walking through life like a ghost, and you still carrying all that weight alone? With Marcus and people like him having nowhere to go when the world becomes too much to bear? David sat beside her on the bench, close enough that their shoulders touched. Then I think we chose correctly, even though it cost us everything we used to be. Especially because it cost us everything we used to be. Elena leaned against him, solid and warm and alive. They were both different people now, shaped by choices that had burned away everything non-essential, leaving only the parts of themselves that mattered. David, yeah. If you had to do it all over again, knowing what it would cost, what would you choose? He was quiet for so long that Elena began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but certain. I would choose you. Every time, in every version of this story, I would choose saving you, even if it meant losing yourself. Elena, I didn't lose myself that night, I found myself. For the first time in my life, I made a choice based on love instead of duty or guilt or anger. That's not losing yourself. It's becoming who you were always meant to be. Elena felt tears start, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition, of coming home to a truth she'd been afraid to acknowledge. "Love you," she said, the words simple and clean. "I love you too," he replied. "Not despite what we've done, but because of who we became when we chose to do it." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, casting long shadows across the garden, Elena realized that some stories don't have endings. They have transformations. They have moments when people choose to become different than they were, and those choices ripple out in ways that can't be measured or contained. She and David would carry the weight of that night forever. They would remember Officer Reynolds' scream, Harrison's final breath, Sophia's still face beneath hospital sheets. They would live with the knowledge that survival sometimes requires sacrifice. And love sometimes demands choices that break you before they remake you. But they would carry it together, and that made all the difference. In the garden around them, vegetables grew from soil that had been tended by hands that knew both violence and healing. Veterans learned to trust again, to sleep again, to believe that broken things could be repaired if given enough patience and care. Elena stood up from the bench, extending her hand to David. "Come on," she said. "Marcus is making dinner tonight, and he gets anxious if we're late." David took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "What's he making?" "Something called Hope Casserole. I'm not sure what's in it, but he says it tastes better when shared." They walked back toward the clinic together, two people who had found each other in the darkest possible moment and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Behind them, the bench waited beneath the oak tree, holding space for the next person who needed a place to sit with the weight of impossible choices. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Points of light that had traveled unimaginable distances to reach this moment, this place, these two people who had learned that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to save someone else first. The end.